So today I'm going to talk to you about 3 projects, but there's one message. The message is the title. The message is that safe cycling is not about one thing in particular. It's about an intersection. And I work in an interdisciplinary team, and this presentation is on behalf of myself and my 2 colleagues, Dr. Marilyn Johnson and Dr. Vanessa Johnston. Really what I'm here to talk to you about is, through these 3 examples, how using an interdisciplinary approach we found it to be very effective, and I suppose we found it useful to kick the hornet's nest, to get involved in some of the quite difficult discussions around road rules, around road safety, around how things work. So that's the overarching message from today. Here are my colleagues. Now, I'm the designer, and so the joke is, of course, that a designer, a road safety specialist, and a lawyer walk into a bar, and they form an interdisciplinary research team, and it's not actually a joke, it's actually just what we do. But those are my colleagues there, and so while I will take questions on all 3 of these aspects, rest assured that my colleague Marilyn is the road safety expert, and my colleague Vanessa is the expert in the road rules. But I'll do my best. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 projects, as I said. The first one is humanising cyclists, the second one, left turns, and the third one is called effective safety. So let's get into it. This project was in the Alpine Shire. Now, the Alpine Shire is a region in Victoria's high country, down south from here. And the high country, generally, very interesting sort of space for cycling. It's a very interesting space regardless because of its geology. It's mountainous, it's interesting, there's a lot of natural space. Lots of people actually quite like going there. And they like doing all sorts of things, ranging from driving around on highways with caravans to riding around on highways on bicycles, and all sorts of things in between. And so the project was about sharing those roads. It's fascinating to think that a lot of the people in the Alpine Shire who are there as tourists are actually there to use what we might think of as transport infrastructure for a kind of mobility tourism. There is an experience of driving a motorcycle or a car, of towing a caravan or riding a bicycle on roads like this. They're interesting. They go through forests. They go up tall mountains. Well, Australian tall mountains. And so we were asked by the Alpine Shire to help them encourage people to share the road. And when they said people, they did mean all people, but in particular focusing on some road sharing conflicts between those who choose to ride bicycles on these roads and those who choose to drive cars on these roads, or those who work on these roads, driving logging trucks, that kind of thing. So it was through a community road safety grant that the Alpine Shire won from the TAC, and they came to us to implement this work. So it's not an infrastructure project, it's actually an education project. What we found that was really interesting in this project was, in our initial survey of the people in the Alpine Shire who'd ridden or driven there, was that there was this huge overlap in demographics. So sometimes we're inclined to think of people as bike riders or car drivers. And what we discovered is that there's a lot of both here. So those two circles, they really overlap. It's almost like Copenhagen or something. A lot of the people driving motor vehicles in this region are very familiar with riding bicycles in this region. That was quite important. The other thing that was really sort of interesting, I suppose, to discover was that the Alpine Shire had a hypothesis that all the people breaking the road rules or being aggressive were actually people who are, blow-ins from Melbourne like me. And it turns out that everybody had similar attitudes and similar habits. So we tested this out with a survey. We tested who would be willing to wait for certain things for a certain amount of time. How long would you be willing to wait for a farmer moving a flock of sheep across the road? How long would you be willing to wait till some ice was cleared off a road? How long would you be willing to wait to overtake the peloton on a mountain climb? Those are really interesting things that we went through, and I'll talk about the results in a moment as well. We had to find that common ground, and we didn't think that we would find it so easily, but we did find it in, first, the overlap, the fact that most of the people driving motor vehicles of any kind in the Alpine Shire were also at least familiar with, or deeply familiar with, riding bicycles. But there was something else in there as well. Gesturing was so interesting. There's a range of gestures that are made on the roads. I'm sure we're familiar with some of them. what we found very interesting was that this is, in a regional area, you've got your locals. You've got your people who are out on their bikes or out on their motorcycles or out in their cars and their utes. And you know what people do in the country? They wave to each other. They're driving along, or they're riding along with their hands in various positions on all sorts of devices, as we've discovered so far today, and they're gesturing. Now, it's fascinating, but I used to drive around with a caravan, and only caravan people would wave to me because I was a caravan person. And then I'd get on my bike and wear some different clothes, and then only cycling people would wave to me. And then better than that, if I got particular types of bicycle clothes on, other sorts of people would wave to me while I was obviously just a middle-aged man in Lycra. So, there was this really interesting identification of people by which vehicles they drove or which vehicles they hitched on behind other vehicles. But they were all gesturing. So we really grabbed onto this idea, I suppose. What we wanted to do was to encourage the right behaviours, the behaviours that are required by the road rules, but also do it in a friendly way so that we had situations like this where somebody riding a bicycle, and this is a person who's doing some fairly hardcore training, there's a lot of that going on in the Alpine Shire, a lot of athlete-type cyclists, they're still waving. They're just saying hello. They're just being part of the community. And this happens a lot, but there's some really subtle gestures out there. For those of you who do tow caravans or who do ride bicycles, there's a lot of really subtle gestures that might be missed behind the windscreen of a car. So an encouragement to actually just, can you just take your hand off the handlebars just for a second and have that nice sort of slightly larger gesture was a really big connection between people riding bicycles and people driving cars. Just, hi, I'm here and I'm a human and we're both sharing this road together on these vehicles. Sorry, I can't see the slides and I've got to remember what I wrote. All the vehicles were being driven by humans. A major subset of those vehicles were being driven by humans who are there to have fun. They're actually there to have a good time. Cycle tourism and tourism in general in the Alpine Shire was a really big thing. Still is, even through the pandemic. And so what we aimed to do was to recognise that everybody was there to have a version of the same thing, a version of the same experience, in this case driving vehicles of all sorts on mountainous roads. We knew they were gesturing. There was a lot of nice gesturing going on. There's also some not very nice gesturing, but I think you know what I mean. And so what we're trying to encourage them to do is sort of recognise each other. I had a video. It's my fault that it's not going to play. Not going to put that onto the team here. But our campaign was called Live, Drive, Ride Like a Local. So we did quite a lot of work to get this message just right. If you want to watch the video, it's 3 minutes. It's on YouTube. Just use those words to find it. I'm really sorry it can't play today. And what we've aimed to do is use real local people to illustrate that everybody rides bicycles. We didn't use celebrities. We used the bank manager, the pharmacist, a couple of school kids, people who are well known in the community but who are not heroes of the community, if you like. The pharmacist from Mount Beauty said it was really fascinating that on his way to work, on his bicycle, people would try and run him off the road, and then he would see those very people at the counter as he was handing over their medicine. So that building those kind of bridges, I think, has been really important. Okay, so that's project one. A little bit of road safety, a little bit of how are these vehicles being used, and a little bit of road rules, all sort of put into one there. We had to have that great understanding of the road rules in order to look at the gestures, to look at what gestures were actually required by road rules when you're operating a vehicle, and also to understand, could we encourage people to use gestures without going outside of the road rules? Okay, next project is called Left Turns. Has anyone here ever turned left while they're driving a motor vehicle? Put up your hand. Great, keep your hand up if you have ridden a bicycle straight through an intersection while somebody's also turning left in a motor vehicle. Oh goodness, more hands went up. I love this. Right, so, bit of a problem. So Marilyn, Vanessa and I looked very carefully at this situation of left turns. So I've attached a camera to the back of my bike. This is looking back at an intersection. This is sort of a normal bike ride through Melbourne. This is using some various sort of lanes and things, but the situation that I'd like to tell you about is when I'm in a bike lane on the left-hand side of a road and I'm going straight through the intersection, waiting for my lights, whatever, and there are people in motor vehicles who are to my right, but they want to turn left. So they want to go through the path that I'm going straight on. Okay, a few people are nodding. Yeah, it's a little bit tricky. Now, what we wanted to do is understand what was going on here, because we actually were asked the question, what is turning left? You know, what does that actually mean? What does that mean from a legal perspective? It's difficult, I'll tell you that for free. But from a safety perspective as well, that's quite interesting. And also from a design perspective, how do we design our roads to signal that it might be safe to ride a bicycle or safe to ride a scooter, and yet at the same time accommodating larger, faster, heavier vehicles. Why is it so complicated? Why is turning left so complicated? There's so many road rules. There's over 400 of them. Vanessa has read them all. She's going to hate me for telling you that. There are not that many people in Australia who actually understand all of the road rules. We might know one or two. Vanessa knows them all. Yeah, she's amazing. And the road rule that we keep coming back to, and I originally had this slide in green, but my colleague said make it red, is road rule 141, subsection 2. Got the text there as well. Now, this is a really interesting road rule because it's there to save people's lives. It's there to stop people who are riding bicycles or stop vulnerable road users getting run over by motor vehicles. Okay, so fundamentally, I'm on board. But isn't it interesting how it requires the bicycle rider to stop so that the motor vehicle driver can turn left in front of them? That's what this rule is requiring. So back to that scenario, back to me being on the street at any of the hundreds or thousands of crossroads that we have in this wonderful country, and it gives somebody in a car the ability to turn in front of me, and it requires me to stop. Now, I think it's controversial. I think it's an interesting way to try and save lives. And if everybody complies with the rule, it will save lives. But we know that not everybody will comply with this rule because it plays out really interestingly on the street. It plays out differently. So we need to understand not just the road rules, thank you very much to Vanessa, we need to understand the road safety as well, thank you very much to my colleague Marilyn, but we also need to understand how the road is designed and how a person might be able to see or not see what's coming up behind them because of that obligation, if you're on a bicycle, to give way. So we developed an infographic. You can get this for free. I'll give you the website link later on, or the address. It's really easy to find. This slide is intentionally bamboozling, by the way. So we discovered a number of road rules that constitute all of the parts of turning left. What happens when a bicycle rider wants to go straight and a motor vehicle driver wants to turn left? It's one scenario. You may have even undertaken this maneuver today. So many road rules. I just highlighted a few of my favorites, you know. But the idea is that we wanted to communicate just how complicated one road interaction, one road maneuver can be. And that's kind of worrying in a way because there's plenty of other road maneuvers that we could study and plenty of other infographic posters that we could develop to try and sort of conquer that as well. So the message here is that it's not easy. The message here is that you need a road safety person working with a lawyer, working with someone who understands road design to actually unpack these interactions. Because these are the things that I think are standing in the way. They're standing in the way of us feeling safe. Our two previous presentations this morning talk about how wonderful it is when you're out there and you feel like you can have some space on the road and you feel like you're not going to get squashed. Those are really important feelings, I think. But they're so complicated to design, and the road rules may or may not be helping us with that. So unpacking it into our infographic, this is turning left, has given people an understanding. And it's led to some really interesting conversations as well. So we've got this poster up all over the place. We designed it to be B1, that's a weird size. The reason it's that size is because it fits right on the back of a politician's door. So if you want me to send you a free printed copy of this, just get in contact, I will do that. Or if you want to give me the address of 10 of your favourite city councillors, I'll also do that. Because this is the sort of information that needs to be out there. Because people will ask us, what's the problem? Can't you just ride your bikes? You people, stop asking me for bike lanes, right, Fiona? Well, these are the problems. The road rules sometimes are part of the problem, I'm sorry to say. So we tried to do something about it, and that's where I'm going to talk about the third project today. So Marilyn, Vanessa, and I spend a lot of time talking about the road rules, talking about road interactions, different types of vehicles, different scenarios, as I've already gone through. And we found this to be quite difficult, and in our experience, it's always those desktop conversations that you're having in a coffee break scenario, or maybe even in a meeting, where you can't have a good conversation about the road rules, about road interactions, about what's happening where and who's going where and who's sharing the road or who's not. So spatially, we worked out a system of doing this, and it's thanks to our little friend here. We started taking Lego to our meetings. Now, I'm an industrial designer, so I'll take Lego anywhere, but the point, and I did actually bring some, I'll get to that in a minute. The point is that you can't have a good conversation about road interactions if you don't do it accurately. Now, any engineers in the room? Has anyone engineer? Those ones who are willing to admit it, good on you. Right, scale, right? So dimensions of things, it's pretty important. We need to work out how things are going to fit on the road. We've had that discussion already at this conference. But how do we translate that to a tabletop discussion where everybody can participate, not just people who understand technical drawings or people who understand speed and scale? How do we do it at a desktop level? So it's thanks to our little friends here. So what we do is we first understand the nature of the problem. They're really tricky problems. We call them 5-dimensional problems. It's really hard. No, it's actually really easy. But 5-dimensional can be a little bit confronting, but this is why we have to talk about it in this way. So we have to talk about 3-dimensional space, right? So things exist in space. And, road safety, let's stop those things colliding. Okay, pretty simple stuff. That's pretty difficult, actually. 3-dimensional space, it takes a bit of getting your head around, and that's why we need the engineers and the designers in the world to help us make sense of that. But it's time as well. We're talking about things sharing space, and we're talking about different time-based interactions. Green lights, red lights, you go, I wait, you are required to give way to me. All those kind of things are time-based interactions. So we need a way of thinking about that as well. So we've taken the Lego at scale, at Lego scale, which is 1 to 32 in case you're interested, and made these road mats so that in your office or at your politician's desk, you can sit there with a piece of paper and some Lego and say, this is what's happening. You can say, this driver of this car can't see this person on a bicycle, and wouldn't it be nice if they could see them, and wouldn't it be nice if they both understood the road rules, and hey, we'll put in a special mention for road rule 141 subsection 2. Because you always have to do that, trust me. Right, so then we put it onto scale. So we've got the 3 dimensions of space, we've got the road space, and then we've also got a dimension of time. We can literally animate. We can drive these Lego cars and Lego bicycles on the desk and actually have a conversation with people. And you'll be surprised, if you're not already, that taking toys to meetings does actually get people talking. It's pretty nice. Getting them talking about an accurate situation at scale, it's a little stealth move. You can always get people to play with Lego at a desk, I think, but getting them to do a scale model interaction demonstration on the desk is quite difficult unless you've got the right tools. That's effectively what this is. But the road rules were missing. So we're also developing road rule collector cards. Sign up for a copy. We are developing these as we speak. The prototypes are here. I've got some with me today. The idea being that when you walk through these interactions, you can actually lay the cards out on the table. These are verbatim the rules, checked by a real lawyer, of course, and we've also put an illustration at the top to demonstrate what's actually happening. So they're highly simplified because the road rules, as I've said, they're complex and plentiful. But communicating the road rules with these, and the red dots, by the way, penalty units, very nice touch if I do say so myself. Gamify to some extent or engage people with the road rules. The road rules are shocking. You've all got free access to them, by the way. Just Google it. It's Australian law. You are able to access it freely on the internet. But who does that? I know 3 people. Oh, 4, great. So it's really, really difficult to get most people, present company perhaps accepted, to actually engage with the road rules. So repeating those road rules onto the cards, we think it's very important. Making over 400 cards is going to be fairly difficult, but we're producing them as playing cards, and that's actually really cheap to do. So stay tuned for the next step, which is where we start handing them out for free, and every new bike comes with a deck or something like that. Right. So a few sort of take-home messages, I suppose. We've been able to do this work not because we are a 1-person team, but we're a 3-person team, and we've got 3 really different perspectives and 3 different skill sets as well. So it is a big vote for interdisciplinarity. I've lost count of the amount of times that my colleagues have told me I'm wrong about something. that's really powerful, I think. Maybe I've told them once or twice that they're wrong about something, but we work together and we actually get somewhere, which is really different to where we would get alone, and it's really different to where we would get if I was sitting in a room full of other designers, or if Vanessa was sitting in a room full of other lawyers. It's about interacting. So it enables you to tackle the whole problem. So if you have a problem with an intersection, I really want you to think about the road rules there. And if you have a problem with a cultural aspect of who's riding where, I want you to think about the design aspects. You know, those big mountains from my first example, they're really difficult to ride up. But there is a segment of our community that I'm not part of that really enjoy slogging it out on bicycles, riding up really high mountains. Sounds like madness, but that's some people's idea of a great day out. So you've got to understand those cultural aspects. You've got to understand how the road is designed. One of the things in the Alpine Shire was that the shoulder, you know, we actually don't maintain our shoulders to the extent that if we did maintain shoulders just like they were parts of the road, that more people might actually ride bicycles on them. But at the moment, they're sort of stick and stone obstacle courses, as many of you would know. My last take-home message is, who are you going to call? So don't just call Vanessa, she's quite busy. But I would like you to think, if you're in one of these situations, if you're a person who's designing infrastructure or you're having conversations about road safety, do you actually have a lawyer you can call about the road rules? Does your organisation have a legal team, have legal counsel who are on a retainer for other purposes? You know, for IP and unfair dismissal and all those sorts of things that go on organisationally? Maybe you should have a road rule expert on call as well. Being able to talk to somebody about the road rules is really powerful. And it's also, frankly, it's really difficult to talk about the road rules without an expert, because there's so many of them, and because, as the infographic suggests, they're all really intertwined. You can't talk about one road rule in isolation for very long. Which lawyer, which designer, which safety scientist are you going to call? Try calling one at a university, not just mine, but any university. That'll really help you out. And I would encourage you, if you are that safety scientist, know your lawyer, know your engineer, know your designer. I think doing these things interdisciplinary, as we have demonstrated so far in these projects, it's actually led to better results. And if you like, it's led to attacking the real problem. It might be a problem of culture, it might be a legal problem, but you can really get into it if you have an interdisciplinary team. That's our website, cyclopedia.com.au. That's just where we publish all our projects. For anyone here who works at a university, you'll know how difficult it is to get things on a university website, so we decided to make our own. I might get in trouble for it, but it's okay. So please go there. You can find information on all our projects. You can watch the video as well, and there's a lot more background on the 3 projects that I've talked about today. Lastly, a plug, if I may. If you're the sort of organisation that wants to commission PhD research but you can't afford it, please talk to me, because we're launching an active and micro-mobility graduate research project at Monash, where Monash funds half the scholarship for a postgrad. Or you can do it 2 for 1. So either half price or 2 for 1, it amounts to the same thing. We're putting this together and we're looking for industry sponsors. End of plug. Thank you for listening.
Thanks very much, Robbie. Probably got time for 1 or 2 questions. We've got in the front and on the right, and Fiona. Okay, we can get through 3.
I'll be quick.
Great.
Thanks, Robbie. That was incredible. And I feel like I could actually spend an entire afternoon or several days picking your brain on various things. I'll reduce it down to 1 question because I have many. But I have just lived in a country which has a vulnerable road user law. If you're on a bicycle and you're involved in a conflict, the driver of the more powerful vehicle is liable. It wasn't the Netherlands, wasn't Europe, it was actually China. And it was an incredible experience living in very big cities, 18 million people, another one, 20 million people. You can ride around almost, and I don't recommend it, but almost with your eyes closed, because if there's a conflict at an intersection, it is actually the responsibility of the vehicle driver to make sure they're not running cyclists over as they're turning left or right in the case of China. So I'm just keen, what's your thoughts on something like that, and is it needed here? And if so, what are you doing about it?
It's a great question, thank you. I think that default liability is really important. There's a level of confidence and it's like a little friend on your shoulder as you're riding around. So I've ridden in some of those places, and I would agree with the sort of the emotional response, which I think the emotional response is actually important. It's what keeps a lot of people off bikes and off scooters. I'm in favour of it. She won't mind me saying this. Vanessa is working on the default liability legislation structure as we speak.
It's a big one. Question on the right.
Hi mate, how's it going? Jake from Perth, WA, long way away, I know. I'm not going to lie, the Lego got me sucked in. So I'm just talking about your third project, in particular the playing cards, and you made a comment, for every bike sold, we should give a deck of playing cards. I would understand probably educating the cyclists, which there's no previous platform for historically on how to use a road in cohort with cars as well, is a pretty difficult challenge. Would the flip side of that with the infrastructure for driving vehicles, I have to go and get a driving test to do a license, etc., already being in existence, be a possible target for you and this potential playing deck of cards?
The short answer is definitely yes. In fact, our graphic designer, Sienna, is in the middle of her learner driver's study period, and she's finding it quite instructive. So yes, also having good graphic design, having those cards developed means that we can print them out as stickers, badges, get them out on the street. We can do lots of things because the communication's already been sorted. So I totally agree.
Fiona.
Thank you very much, Robbie. This is fascinating, and I love your work. Great on the interdisciplinary collaboration there. My question is, in your Lego set, do you have or can you get a bus and a bus lane? Because when a car is turning left across a bus lane, the bus doesn't have to stop and give way.
We have a bus, Fiona. We have a truck, we have a bus. We actually have a cargo trike as well, because Lego made that a new component last year. For all those fans of Lego, you know what I'm talking about. I have a Lego set and a deck of cards in my bag at table 14 right now. So anybody who wants to come and play at the beginning of lunchtime is very welcome to. And because I brought my bicycle to this conference, I really don't want to take the Lego set home with me. So one lucky participant will be part of our product development strategy where we have to put it out to users, and you can post it back to me at a later date.
Thank you so much, Robbie. Here's our little present for you. Catherine, I've got yours. I forgot to give you. Thank you.